Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name's Rhiannon and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I plan on reading in January. I honestly cannot believe that we are already into January of 2025. 2024 seems to have just flown by and I'm really excited for this new reading year actually. Saying that though, I have no idea what I'm in the mood to read at the minute. I have so many books that I want to mention today. Some of them have been on TBRs before, some of them haven't. And I think I'm just going to see how I feel throughout the month and pick up these books as and when. So they're not necessarily set in stone, but obviously they are on this TBR. I would like to get to them and hopefully I do manage to do so. I do have 8 books that I'm going to feature in this video today. We have a mix of different genres and formats, which will hopefully help me to get through all of them. So without further ado, let's dive on into the TBR. The first book I plan on reading in January is Cursed Crowns by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Webber. This is the second book in the Twin Crown series. I don't know if this series has a particular name, but the first book is called Twin Crowns. I read that one in November, I believe, and I really want to carry on with the rest of the books in the series. We have this one and the third book, and we also have a new one coming out, I believe, in April this year as well. I think that one's more of a companion novel, but I would like to be caught up by the time that one comes out so that I can of course read it. In the first book, we follow 2 main characters who, you guessed it, are twins. They are actually both princesses, however, on the day that they were born, unfortunately, their mother and father were murdered. Rose was actually raised in the palace. She was raised to be a princess by the king and queen's ward until she was old enough to be crowned queen. And as part of her upbringing, the ward has actually turned Rose against all witches because he has convinced her that the witches were responsible for her parents' death. Rose now vows that when she will become queen, the witches will be obliterated, as she obviously has a resentment towards them and she herself is extremely scared of them. Then we have Wren, who was actually taken from the palace on the night of the murders and was raised by the witches. She is very much aware of how Rose feels towards the witches though, and so she decides that she is going to take Rose's place as the queen, and that involves trying to kidnap her. That's all I want to say about this series, to be honest with you guys. I went into it not really knowing too much and I really did have a great time with the first book. I did listen to the audiobook of it. I am going to be listening to the audiobook of the second one as well because, as I said, I had a great time with it. It's a really great audiobook and I would highly recommend listening to the series. So that is what I'm going to continue to do with this one. Hopefully I can smash this one out. Saying that though, it is a pretty chunky book. It's a beautiful book though. This is the Waterstones exclusive edition and I do have the exclusive edition of all 3 books, which I'm really happy about. But yeah, it is about 550 pages from what I can see, so it's definitely going to take a chunk of time to get through this one, but I am familiar with the characters, I'm familiar with the world now. Of course, we are tackling some different themes in this second book, but even so, I cannot wait to dive into this. I'm hoping I love it as much as I did the first book, and it is one that I'm probably going to start relatively early on in the month. I'm actually embarrassed to show you guys this next book because I believe it's been on 3 TBRs now, and that one is Malice by John Gwynne. I'm reading this as part of the Catch Up Book Club, which is hosted by Becca from Becca and the Books here on YouTube. The live show for this one is in January and I need to read this whole thing. This one is over 600 pages and I'm just going to show you the writing because it is tiny, guys. Look at that. I feel like I'm going to struggle with this one, but I do actually own this one on Kindle as well, which is definitely going to help me. I do tend to read my chunkier books on Kindle just because I can't see how much of the book I have left to read, and so I feel less intimidated by it. So that is what I'm going to do for this one. Obviously it's been on a few TBRs. I was meant to read it before this point and now I feel like it's crunch time, so I'm going to have to finish this book this month, which I don't mind because I really do want to get to it. It's the first installment in this new round of the Catch Up Book Club as well because this is the first book in the Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne, and I do actually own John Gwynne's other trilogy, his Norse-inspired trilogy, and I thought I would read this series first with Becca and all the other book club members and then move on to John Gwynne's later works. I am going to read you the synopsis for this book just because I have no idea how to describe it. All I know is that it features a battle between men and giants. So it says, the banished lands have a violent past where armies of men and giants clashed in battle. An uneasy peace reigns, but now giants stir once more. The very stones weep blood, and there are sightings of gigantic worms. Those who can still read the signs see a prophecy realised. Sorrow will darken the world as angels and demons make it their battlefield. Young Corbin watches enviously as boys become warriors and yearns to join them, determined that he will make his family proud. It's only when everything he knows is threatened that he discovers the true cost of becoming a man. As the kings look to their borders and priests beg for answers from the gods, only a chosen few know that the fate of the world will be decided between two champions, the Black Sun and the Bright Star, and with their coming will be a war to end all wars. That sounds phenomenal. I can't believe I haven't read this one yet. I do think I'm just intimidated by it because I haven't really read an adult high fantasy book recently, and so yeah, diving into a new series is definitely scary, but I feel like once I actually sit down and read a few pages, I will be immersed in the world straight away and will hopefully fall in love with the story. Speaking of adult high fantasy books, the next book on my January TBR is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, which is the second book in the Mistborn trilogy. I honestly just want to laugh, guys, because who do I think I am? The reason this is actually on my TBR is because I have slowly been reading it throughout the last year. I read the first book in this series, which is called The Last Empire, in January last year, and I was meant to dive straight on into this one, but I haven't for some reason. Because of that, I have been reading it slowly, as I said. I'm only about 20% of the way through, so I still have quite a ways to go, but when I had the opportunity to pick up my Kindle and read a few pages when I was getting my hair done or traveling or things like that, I did gravitate towards this book, and I did of course get through the beginning. So my aim for this one is to hopefully finish it this month. Again though, I'm being very ambitious because this one is over 700 pages, so we'll see about that. But as I said, this is an epic high fantasy series, and in the first one we follow Kelsier, who is a Mistborn. Now, a Mistborn can ingest all the different metals and use them to perform allomancy, which essentially means that they can use the metals to enhance different abilities. Mistborns are extremely rare. Kelsier believes he's the only one until he meets our other main character, Vin. Vin is a street rat. She has been hiding from oppressive rulers her whole life, and so she is definitely wary of Kelsier to begin with. However, as she spends more time with him, she does learn to come to trust him. The only real issue with this is that Kelsier is trying his best to free the Scar in this world, and the Scar are essentially slaves. They are ruled over by a tyrant called the Lord Ruler, and Kelsier is trying his best to overthrow the Lord Ruler in order to free the Scar and bring peace to the land. Of course, it's a lot more complicated than that. It's very high stakes and it will honestly break your heart, but it's such a fantastic first book in a series, and I don't know why it's taken me this long to get to the second book. So I've put it on my TBR. Hopefully that means I will actually finish it so that I can finally move on to the third book. Then, to break up those chunky books, the next one I would like to get to is Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. This is actually a novella set in the world of Caraval, and for those of you who don't know, I have recently finished the Caraval series. I read Legendary and Finale in December, and whilst I wanted to get to this one in December, I unfortunately wasn't able to, and so I have moved it to January because I would love to finish out the Caraval series this month. I've owned them for so many years, and I'm so happy that I made it a mission during the last few months of the year to finish those out, and of course I managed it. This is a very new release as well, and yeah, I picked it up on my recent trip to Waterstones, and I will be reading it this month. All I'm going to tell you about this book is what the little snippet says at the bottom. It says, set after Stephanie Garber's #1 New York Times bestselling Caraval series, this delightful novella will take readers on the ultimate holiday adventure full of clockwork, boys, poison candy, impish snow globes, merriment, and if Teller gets her way, love. So this is a Christmas novella, which obviously we've passed the Christmas season now, but I always love a Christmassy read, so I will definitely be happy to dive in. This is also full of different illustrations, which I just love. So I feel like I'm going to fly through this one. I'm hopefully going to have a good time with it, and it's just going to be a nice easy read to break up the denser books that I also have to read this month. Another book that I'm hoping will give me a change of pace is The Hike by Lucy Clark. This, if you couldn't tell, is a thriller. However, saying that, all of Lucy Clark's books are marketed as thrillers, but I've read 3 now and I feel like they've all been murder mysteries rather than thrillers, so we'll see how this one goes. But I've owned this for about a year, I want to say now, and I said when I bought it that I was going to save it and read it in January, and I'm keeping to that promise. I'm desperate to get to this one. Lucy Clark is a favourite author of mine, and this one just feels like it is meant to be read in the colder months for some reason for me, so that is why I've put it on this TBR. The synopsis for this one reads, "The perfect day for a hike, the perfect place to disappear. Leaving behind their everyday lives, 4 friends hike out into the beautiful Norwegian wild. Nothing between them and the mountain peak but forest, sea and sharp blue sky. But there's a darker side to the wilderness. A woman went missing here 1 year ago, scarring the mountain with suspicion and unanswered questions. Now the friends are hiking into the heart of the mystery, and waiting on the trail is someone who'd do anything to keep their secrets buried and to stop the group walking away alive." That just sounds amazing. I love going on hikes. I don't know whether this will put me off now though, but the setting as well is sure to be a great one. I feel like it's going to be more of an isolated setting as well because we have a small group of friends going up into the mountains. I live by the mountains. I know how treacherous they can be, and the fact that you have a killer on the loose as well is just going to up the stakes even more. So again, I feel like this is going to be a nice little palette cleanser. It's going to give me a break from the adult high fantasy books that I have, and hopefully I really do love this one because I've been saving it all these months and I cannot wait to finally dive in and read it. Now, the last 3 books I have to show you guys aren't really set in stone, but for some reason I've been drawn to them over the past few days and would like to try and read them this month. The first of those is a very new release. This one is A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson, and I actually received this one today. Not gonna lie guys, it's the cover that drew me into this. How beautiful is it? And I also got the Waterstones exclusive edition with these stenciled edges, which I just love. I obviously read the synopsis of this one when I pre-ordered it, but I couldn't tell you anything about it now, so I may actually read you the synopsis for this one as well. It says, "London 1923. Dragons soar through the skies and protests erupt on the streets. But Vivian Featherswallow isn't worried. She's going to follow the rules and get an internship studying dragon languages. By midnight, Viv has started a civil war. With her parents arrested and her little sister missing, all the safety Viv has worked for is collapsing around her. So when a lifeline is offered in the form of a mysterious job, she grabs it. Arriving at Bletchley Park, Viv discovers that she has been recruited to uncover the secrets of a hidden dragon language. If she succeeds, she and her family can all go home again. If she doesn't, they all die. But the more Viv learns, the more she realises that the bubble she's grown up in isn't as safe as she thought. And eventually she must decide, what war is she really fighting?" That sounds phenomenal. For those of you who don't know, I am actually a Welsh language teacher, so the fact that language is a big element of this book is sure to be a hit for me. I also love dragons, and again, the fact that there are dragons in London just has me so intrigued, and yeah, I'm just desperate to pick this one up. I also saw that B was reading this book, and I messaged her about it, and she said that she possibly wanted to do a buddy read, so I may be buddy reading this one with B. For those of you who don't know, I met B on my recent trip to Egypt. She is honestly one of the nicest people in the world. I will leave her channel link down below. Please go and check her out. And yeah, I can't wait to possibly buddy read this one with her. If I do get to it in January, I may just be messaging her anyway if it's not a set buddy read, but I feel like it would be fun to do a buddy read. I haven't done it in a while, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm very glad to have this one on my TBR. And even though I technically should be getting to some older books that I own, I'm way too excited for this one. The next book that I may read in January is A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. This is a fantasy romance book, and again, I wanted to put this one in to break up the fantasy that I'm planning on reading this month. I absolutely love a fantasy romance novel. I tend to fly through them, and when I read the synopsis for this one in my latest book haul, I just got really excited about it again, and a lot of you guys were commenting as well saying that this was a good book. So it's on my TBR for this month. Again, I don't know if I'll actually get to it. I am going to put a selection of these books up on a poll for Patreon as well. For those of you who don't know, I do have a Patreon. This is going to be my first full month of getting back into it, and I'm so excited, especially for the monthly buddy read that I'm going to be including as a perk for the tiers. So I think I'm going to choose about 2 or 3 books from this pile and put them up on Patreon, and my Patreons can vote for which book they want to read as the buddy read book, and then I'll be filming an exclusive spoiler-filled Patreon reading vlog, which I'm just so excited for. So this is definitely a contender. It's a relatively new release as well. I got it in a subscription box, and I was going to read you a little snippet of the synopsis, but it doesn't seem to have one. Essentially, we follow our main character Lorelei, who is a folklorist with a quick temper and an even quicker wit, and she goes on an expedition with 6 eccentric nobles in search of a mythical spring with untold power. The mission gets off to a very tragic start though, when Lorelei's mentor is actually murdered, and of course these suspects are her 5 remaining companions. Then it says here, the only person Lorelei knows must be innocent is a long-time academic rival, the insufferably gallant and maddeningly beautiful beautiful Sylvia von Wolf. Now in charge of the expedition, Lorelei must find the spring before the murderer strikes again and a coup begins in earnest. And then of course it's not that simple. There are other dark forces lurking and she needs to work together with Sylvia to try and find a way to save themselves and also the kingdom. That just sounds amazing. The artwork itself is making me desperately want to pick up this book. The fact that it's sapphic as well is hopefully going to be a good time. So whilst I'm saying that this isn't necessarily set on my TBR, I would really love to get to it this month. And the last book I have to show you guys is one that I'm carrying over from last year. I can't believe that I didn't manage to read this one in 2024. I put it on my December TBR. I said to you guys that I was going to read it, and yeah, I just didn't have the time, unfortunately. And that one is of course Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. I recently read the first book in this duology, which is What the River Knows, on my trip to Egypt. It was the book club pick for that trip, which was hosted by Gavin over at Gavin Reads It All here on YouTube. And everyone who went read the book, and we didn't actually discuss it because we were all at different parts of the book, but I did manage to finish it as my plane landed on the way back from Egypt. And I was desperately wanting to dive into the second book because I really was immersed in the world and I wanted to know how it all unfolded in this book, because the ending of the first book was insane and I just need to know what is going to happen. As I said though, I didn't manage to read it, which is such a pain, but I am possibly carrying over into this month. If not this month, it will be next month. But I feel like this is going to be a quick and easy read because I'm so familiar with the characters, because I've been to Egypt and I know the locations that are mentioned in this book. I just feel like I'm going to fly through it and have the best time. So I would like to get to it sooner rather than later, and I'm hoping that January will be the month where I do that. Of course, with this being the second book in a series, I can't tell you too much about this book in particular, but in the first book we follow our main character Inez, whose parents are actually away working in Egypt as archaeologists. One day though, a letter arrives informing Inez of her parents' deaths, and she decides to take it upon herself to travel to Egypt in order to see what her parents were doing and to also try and find out more about the circumstances of their deaths as well. When she gets there though, she realizes that not everything is as it seems. There are a lot of different things at play here, and the murder of her parents is just the tip of the iceberg. The more she stays, the more danger she's in, and she starts to realize that some people will do whatever it takes to get what they want. I don't really want to say too much more than that because I don't want to spoil anything or give anything away. We do also have a male main character in here who is our love interest, and I will say he was definitely a pleasant part of that book for me, so I'm excited to see what happens in the second book. As I said, I had a good time with the first book. I flew through it and the ending just blew me away, so I do need to dive into this one soon and carry on reading to find out what has actually happened. The fact that it's a duology as well is definitely a help because I'm not tied into a longer book series, so hopefully that will give me the motivation I need to actually pick this one up this month. So there we have it guys, these are the books that I would like to get to in January. I'm aware that this is an extremely large stack and I'm being very overambitious here, but I'm in a weird reading mood right now. I kind of want to read a bit of everything, and I feel like this stack will be a good one for me to have, just so that I can pick and choose what I want to read throughout the month depending on my mood. And as I said, there are a few different palette cleansers in there for when I need one after completing a dense adult high fantasy book. If you have made it this far through into the video or would like to let me know that you're still here, please go ahead and leave me a mountain as the emoji of the video. I'm just so drawn to the cover of the hike for some reason, and as I said, I live by mountains, I love hiking up mountains, and I feel like that would be a very fitting emoji. I know I say it all the time, but seeing you guys comment the emoji of the video truly does mean the world to me. So if you are still here but don't have anything in particular that you would like to say, please go ahead and comment that now. As well as that, please don't forget to click the like button if you like this video and the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content from me. But that is it from me guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon in my next video. Goodbye!